Our next presenter here in Bryant Park B is Misi Mladoniczky with RRR. And I think you win the prize for coming the longest distance for this meeting.
Oh, they're usually the South Africans or Australian people or something like that. But
I think you're the farthest this time.
okay, good.
Okay, great. So without further
Croatia.
Croatia,
yeah,
from Croatia, right? Yeah. So and we're happy to have Misi again. He's been a long time remedy guy, and a lot of us have used his product. It's a great product. Without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Misi. I'm going to stop sharing, and you can go ahead and share.
Okay. Oh. So that's it.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Bob, can you see if we've got audio on Zoom? I think we have audio on Zoom.
We're good.
We're good? Okay. All right.
So how many? So I wanted this thing to be pretty interactive, and so do we have an extra mic?
Yep.
Right. So as soon as you want to interrupt or have an objection or have something to add, it would be great if you did that. Okay. This mic almost picks up the whole room, but I think it's better with that mic. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Helix ITSM and Remedy license models and how they affect you and what happens when you migrate and to the newer models and so on. We have some BMC people here who can probably help me if I missed something. I had a bit of a computer problem this night, so I've been a little bit stressed out, but I hope it will work. So my name is Misi Mladoniczky, and I worked as a remedy consultant since 1995. And whenever I found some things that I could automate or fix, I tried to pack it up as small utilities, and I posted this on my company's website. Most of it is for free. So that's how I came into this community. I started my own company in 2001, and then I have the main flagship product of the company is RRR license that offers free monitoring and assessment of your remedy license situation. So you can understand if you have the right number of licenses, how many you need, and if you're using your licenses in an optimum way. So during the presentation, we will talk a little bit about how licensing works so that we are all on the same page. And then a little bit about the different license models that exist and how it affects things.
Hang on a second, Misi. I've got a wonderful Zoom. I've got to actually make, who am I going to make host? Oh. I know. I am logging this me over there. Okay, hang on a second. Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry. Stand by one.
You're going to have to stop your recording. Step back out of the room a second. Make them out.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
All right, you should be good.
Can you see if we're recording on the Zoom?
Your thing shows you recording.
Hang on a minute.
Yes, you're recording.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
Are we
Sorry, Misi.
good to go?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
You don't have to start over.
No, we will do a small license recap, look at the different license models, and then see how you can assess your license efficiency when it comes to remedy licenses, or remedy ITSM and Helix licenses. So maybe, yeah, so this is a kind of an old slide and some old images from remedy user version 3 or something like this. These small pictures down, and it's about what you can do with different kind of licenses. So if anyone disagrees with this, you can chime out, but I'm pretty sure that this was how it used to work and how it's still working. And as we heard in the last session, it even works in Innovation Suite now in the same way. So a fixed license or a named user license that guarantees that you can always write to the database on any ticket that you have permission to update. Okay. Floating licenses then gives you a write license on the first come first served basis. So it's the concurrent licenses. So you set the maximum for your system to whatever you purchased. So when do you need a write license? Does anyone know when you need a write license? Yeah, pretty much. So you can set the system so you can actually create records without the license, with a read license. So do you know when a floating license is reserved, when it's kind of reserved from the pool? Anyone?
So when you first attempt to make an update or create, do you have a floating available to you?
I'm thinking you log in. If you log in with
It does not immediately give you the float?
No, but as soon as you read any data in any form.
So generally, generally I see it floating -read, which means it's not really taking the float yet.
Yes, but that's only when there were no reads, no one's available, and it's the small period from when you log in until you actually read any data. And I think they did some special thing with this overview console, so you can go in there and see the list of tickets without actually reserving a license, because that was a problem. I don't know if anyone can confirm that. There was an issue at some points. As soon as you went into the overview console, it reserved all the application licenses just for you reading the list of tickets.
This platform is app license, right? The app license are full when you attach a form.
Is tagged for that specific application, yeah.
And you're right, the
yeah.
license because it's designed against
yes.
It does not reserve the app licenses,
no.
but it does reserve the platform license.
Yes, the platform license, yes. Platform license in any form, but for the applications, each of the forms that belongs to that application is tagged for that application. So when you go there, it tries to pull that application license. Okay, good. And when is the floating license released then? Anyone? Yeah, you can put it down to 1 hour, and when you don't touch the system for 1 hour, it will release it automatically. It usually comes with 2 hours by default. Then there is also, if you log out from the system, it's supposed to release immediately.
Wow.
Yes, but that should be equivalent to a logout.
Like the same. So when you log out, it releases immediately. Close the browser, and the last one is closed.
Yeah, the last window or
there's a short timeout period.
Yes.
So it's a slight difference.
Yeah.
But you're right.
It's intended to work pretty much the same. Thank you. Okay, that's a good position for the mic. Thank you. And then we have the read and restricted read licenses. So what I just Okay, so a read license, you can submit records, and you can also, if you have set the server settings in submitter mode locked, you can also update records created with that user's name in the submitter field. And it pretty much intended for these end customers who just submit tickets into the system and want to maybe check their status and maybe say, okay, it's fixed or it's not fixed, or things like this. And then there's a special restricted read license that you can share among different persons. It's usually used for reporting purposes when someone, multiple people goes to somewhere and they have a generic account for getting some information out of the system. I don't know if this read and restricted read doesn't really apply to the applications, because you will need an application license to get to those. In the previous versions, it was a distinction between application licenses and the AR license, and you typically needed both. But the AR user license, it was renamed to Service Management Specialist, and now Custom Applications in the latest license model. It's needed if you have a custom application. So the latest name is probably the best one. So if you build your own forms, you need to have a custom applications fixed or floating license. And that also applies to the innovation suite from now. So if you have a custom applications license working in Remedy, you can also work in Innovation Studio applications without additional license needs. And from the beginning, you needed both an AR license and an application license to access the actual applications. So is any of you on the Helix or the new 2015 license model? Are most of you there? But there are still some on the 2007. So both of these exist, and I think it's then we have the actual version of the AR system. So it's from version 18 that it works with these bundled licenses. I think so. Nowadays you only apply exactly the same thing as you buy. You apply to the users, and that's a little bit easier. So this is what it looked like before. So you had to buy like a service desk fixed gave you one AR user fixed, one incident fixed, and one problem fixed. And this was also what you needed to apply to the users. But nowadays, instead, you buy a bundle and you apply the bundle to the user. So it's much easier. And if you look at the logs of the system, it doesn't even track this AR user license or custom application license if you're just using bundled licenses to access the applications. These are some common pitfalls that can make you not being compliant with your license agreement. And one big thing that I saw is that the user form and the people data got out of sync. And that was pretty much when you went into the user form and did updates. And that didn't automatically propagate back to the people data. So then these forms got out of sync. When you looked at what you have assigned, you look at the people data, but what BMC does their audits on what's in the user form. So this could potentially become a problem. And in the earlier days, of course, what you bought and what you actually applied to your system didn't map one-to-one, so it was a bit difficult to keep track of. Then you can also put the higher number of licenses, fixed floating licenses, concurrent users in the system that you actually own to be safe if someone goes over the limit, but you also need to track that you cross this limit to talk to your sales rep and get more licenses. And then there are some more obscure things from the past where you gave you split these fixed bundles up and used it on different users. That was really not permitted, but it was also hard to follow up by BMC. So this is not such a big thing. And you also need to know which license model you are on, but it's getting easier and easier.
Can you clarify that first statement a little bit? I haven't seen how to actually assign like the. Usually you're still assigning that to application level. Have you assigned?
I think here is a screenshot where you can see wherein you're in the people form and you assign like this suite license concurrent. That's the fixed one. No, that's the floating one. And here we have suite user. Or you assign service desk, that's incident problem for those users who use only that. But every user has only one of these licenses now.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then we have the service operations, that is change asset SLM, I think. Yeah.
Is there documentation on the optimization split out with those graph versus the other ones?
Yeah, in short, the service optimization basically bundles what used to be change management, asset management, SLM. So basically, together in the service optimization.
So a user who uses only those three, one or two or three of those should have that.
In general, if you want to find out what is included in the license in terms of entitlement, when you go to EPD, customer, you'll see the software, but you also see this license entitlement document. It's exactly the one that matches
what they purchase.
Right? So because there are multiple models and two different ones for on-prem and one for SaaS. Therefore, we decided to put this into EPD so that you only see the one that is download the document and list exactly what you can do with these service optimizations. Now it's a partner, there's other sources that can get access to this as part of the standard enablement. So not only this license, but for a customer, they can get it from.
So if you got access to the customer's support ID,
yeah, you have access to the at the top level, and when you go to items and suite, right? There's all these subfolders, but at the top level, there's this PDF. And for SaaS, it's actually a documentation page, right? Because it's only one model, SaaS. SaaS is the entitlement is documented. It's a doc space called Helix subscriber information. It's all entitlement.
Yeah. Okay. Then another thing that has changed since the beginning is the price ratio between fixed and floating licenses. In the beginning, it was 1 to 2.5, and now it's 1 to 3 most of the times. But in many cases, you have negotiated well with BMC and have your own ratio. So when you want to optimize and assess how many fixed and floating licenses you need to know the ratio between fixed and floating to be able to do the best possible thing for you. Okay, here I think it's from version 18.x that you added the license bundles to the server instead of these individual applications, and also on the users. And here on the lower screen, it's this locked or changeable. And if you want to use the read licenses to actually update records, you have to change it to locked. Otherwise, you could just change the submitter field and then someone else could update this record. So when you migrate to the 2015 pricing model, BMC has a tool where they analyze the data in the user form and permissions to see which license every user should have, or bundle they should have in the future. So for instance, if you are using both change and incident are configured from that, you need a suite license, etc. If you only use incident and problem, you can have this service desk. Is it called that? I'm getting confused. Yeah. And what they do there is to see what's in the user form and how many licenses you bought previously, and they give you a suggestion on how many bundled licenses you should have of each type. But this is also a very good point in time to assess your situation and see if you are using the licenses efficiently. Maybe you have a lot of users with fixed licenses that don't use the system so much, or floating users using the system a lot. So you have to put the right user in the right spot. And then there are also some roles in the system that require a fixed license. So this also has to be taken into account. So some users you can't give a floating because they need to delete records or something and they need a fixed license.
So you also kind of changed the fixed license recently to where it has to match the user license, right? So you can't assign a fix. Usually you can assign like a fix to a floating to say user, but if they have a fixed overall user license, it's now required.
So one thing we did change is, first of all, I should say this, two ways how to configure the
Can you pick up the microphone, Peter?
So there's two ways how to configure the license control in the software. Right? One is the old way with user and incident management, fix and incident management flow. That's the traditional way. And then looking at the screen earlier, right, you can see there's an option to configure the bundle licenses, right? That way you don't have to think about how does what I bought map to these granular license types, right?
And the AR user licenses that you were talking about, you couldn't have a floating AR license and a fixed application license, for instance. That was illegal. This is no longer an option because you just assign one bundle here, and that's it. It includes.
What we changed, I think what you're referring to is did at some point in time don't care about whether somebody had a floating platform license and a fixed app license. Right. That doesn't make sense in our perspective because fixed means you always have access. And you cannot always have access to the app if your underlying platform license may be gone. Yeah. So that is the only thing that we changed over the course of time. That we don't allow this configuration. The other direction is still possible as far as I know. Right? So you can have a fixed platform license and a floating app license.
Because maybe you're using custom apps a lot and not so much applications.
So again, the only thing that we eventually got, this was a couple of releases ago, this is combination floating platform and fixed app. So we really guarantee access fixed unless the platform is also fixed.
So our product RRR license, it has a free version that gives you most of the functionality and everything you need to assess your situation to see, am I perfectly aligned with my licenses, or can I maybe improve it by having a little bit more fixed licenses and less floating and things like this. And it could also help you to figure out what you should have in the new license model. There's still some hands-on you need to do and thinking to get this right, but it will assist in this. So what you need to be able to do this is to make sure that you have license tracking turned on that creates records in AR system historical license usage when people log in and log out and grab application licenses. That's things like this. And this can be used to then see exactly how many fixed and floating licenses you need in your system. And I guess it will be in the now with the newest pricing model. If you give a user a suite license, there will be very hard to find out if they never use anything but incident, for instance. That might be because it's no longer logged in the historical license usage form. The only thing that is logged there is that they are using their suite license. So. Okay. So these are, oh, my power is not working. Do we have any power somewhere that is working?
Right here, right there.
Okay. No, let's see. Maybe it was this. Okay, sorry.
No worries.
I've had enough technical problems in the last 24 hours.
You're in good company.
Okay. Hi there.
Oh, I turned it on.
It doesn't matter. I saw that it maybe focused on the screen. It's a cool little camera. Yes, okay. So when you do the assessment, the first thing I want you to look at is the license buffer you have. If you have a shortage or a big surplus of floating licenses, because this is easily seen if you check some logs in the system. And of course, you can always buy more licenses, but you can also try to move the right user to the right license and make sure that you have the right mix of fixed and floating licenses on your system. So this is very hard to figure out with the BMC tools. And if you have a big buffer, well, that costs money too, because then you're paying for something that you're not really using. When you're not on this on-demand model, usually you can freeze licenses that you don't use, and you can reinstate them later if you really need them. This is really up to your sales rep and you to discuss, so I can't guarantee that this will work, but I've seen this many times. But if you're on demand or Helix, I guess you can ramp up and down the number of licenses you use more easily, right?
Is that correct, Peter?
If you're on the Helix or on demand, you can increase and decrease the licenses you're using more easily than.
Really, I mean, you're still supposed to buy the licenses that you use.
To buy.
Still need to buy.
You don't rent.
Short-term requests where you need some short-term capacity.
So I thought that on demand meant that you paid per month or something like this. No, you still have to buy the licenses and.
So you generally buy the license at a certain level.
And then pay maintenance as usual. Yeah. Okay.
No, it's a subscription. It's a SaaS subscription, but you determine upfront how many licenses you need. It's not on a month-by-month billing. But it's a year by year. You can adjust at some point. You can adjust, but usually you have to talk to your
sales
person or your partner.
So okay.
It's not that we bill you variably. Each month's a different amount depending.
No.
So we determine upfront. Now again, if there's an emergency need, there's ways how to adjust that temporarily. But in general, the model is you buy upfront, not much you need.
You're paying an annual subscription, not a monthly or anything.
Yeah, it's not a variable one. Right. It's a static one. When you write a certain number, that's billed monthly.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay. Sorry. And then there is the license efficiency. This is what's it called? A number or a percentage that I've invented. It has to do with how well you're using your licenses. And 100% efficiency is when you use it as we suggest. So I'm comparing this to what your usage is currently at. And I've seen a few situations where the current situation was a little bit more than 100%, but it's very rare. So this is a real life example when a customer had a license efficiency of 74% with a license buffer of -3, so they had a shortage. And by rearranging users and changing the mix of fixed and floating licenses in their system, they could get to a license buffer of +9 instead, without purchasing extra licenses, just by redistributing their money to put them on the right type of license.
How often do you recommend performing this assessment?
It depends. If you're very close to the limit, once a month. If you are like normally okay, maybe every 6 months or so you can do, or definitely once a year to see. But if you, so the trigger is if you're getting a license shortage, then you have to decide if you can redistribute your users or if you can, if you need to buy more licenses. So this is the simple answer, I think. So the free version gives you monitoring of the license buffer, and it tells you the efficiency and how many fixed and floating licenses that we think should be optimum for you. The full version then tells you which user to actually give which license. So that's the key to actually realize this savings. But if you don't, you can always assess your situation as maybe you're pretty good aligned already. So then, and this doesn't cost you anything. And we will also help you even if you're using the free version to make sure that you understand what the result. This is, it's pretty much what I have said, but it works both for Remedy and ITSM, and also if you're on demand, you can get the data out from this historical license usage form to be used as and analyze your situation. Yeah.
Fast getting logs is painful. So how is the SaaS customer, how would they get you the information to analyze?
The information traditionally was in a log file on the server, but now this log file grows at a tremendous rate because it's a lot of stuff logged there. But instead there is the AR system historical license usage form, and this form tracks a lot less information. For every time a user logs in and logs out, it pretty much tracks it once, or once per application maybe. But you get the record, so it's much less. So this is what we recommend to use nowadays.
Exporting that form. Exporting all the data from that one form.
Yes, so you export it into an ARX file, and you can also export data from your user form to know which application licenses has been assigned to users. So it can match this and also find users never logging in and things like this. Yeah. So this is pretty much the process. You turn on license tracking. It might be on by default. I don't know for sure. Then you export from the AR system historical license usage and maybe user form. You upload the data to our web-based service, or you install a local version of this analyzer on a Windows PC and do it without sending anything out on the internet, because that's a problem in some cases.
So for military customers,
Yeah.
NIPRNet folks,
They use
install it.
yeah, there are quite a few who use this, military and banks primarily.
Okay, and they install it locally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then you have to tell it how many fixed and floating licenses you actually own, and I missed it here, but you will enter the price for the fixed and floating license, or at least the right ratio between the fixed and floating licenses, so it can understand this. So this you can configure, and then you get the result. And this is how it used to look when we have the different applications and the AR licenses and stuff. So you got the efficiency and buffer for each application and each fixed and floating and so on. So it was a lot. Nowadays it looks more like this. So you have a single row, remedy service management suite. If you only have this type of license, you can see how many users are registered, how many active users you have, and the suggested need to get to if you optimize this system. I can show you. Let's go to the optimization tab. So this shows you a graph of the different dates. You had your log running, and the blue is the fixed licenses, and the yellow is the floating license usage, and the gray on top is the buffer you have. And then you can swap users around. So the high active users get the fixed and the low active a floating. So you see that the blue increases, and you increase your buffer on top. And then we suggest also the optimum mix. So you currently have 30 fixed and 200 floating, right? Or the max floating usage is 200, yeah. No, not at all. Yeah, 200 or 200. So if we suggest instead that you would have 177 fixed licenses and a lot less floating. So without actually buying more licenses money-wise, you can go from a buffer of 0 to a buffer of 50 in this case. Usually I recommend to have a little bit of longer logging period, maybe 6 weeks, or 4 to 6 weeks, so you are sure that everyone using the system are actually in the logs. And here's another view of this. It shows you, maybe this, they didn't have a shortage here. I will show it on the slide instead.
So what you're kind of saying, Misi, is that sometimes it's more advantageous to buy a fixed license because it is cheaper if you've got people that are consuming things on a basis.
So if you have the...
Most people just go and say, hey, I want it floating because it gives me the most flexibility.
Yes. I've seen customers who have almost only fixed or almost only floating, but usually the right answer is somewhere in between. Yeah. So if you... Yeah.
We say the same.
Yeah.
Also see customers who maybe except for the free admin users that they need the fixed licenses. Beyond that, they buy convert licenses, and it doesn't make sense. Most companies have some power users who spend at least a few hours in the system. That's the service that's getting to the system. For those, it's much better to go with an 8 license. It's cheaper than more than a concurrent license because they usually hold on to that for a long time. And then it's a much more expensive license. So it should be a mix.
So this is a list bubble for every user in the system. So, and the blue ones are fixed and the yellow ones are floating. So and the size is how much time they were logged in during your peak hours. Usually we select the 20% of the hours your system is active and focus on these times, because if you're logged in the weekends or in the middle of the night, it doesn't matter so much. So this guy has a fixed floating license and he was logged in 99% during peak hours. So that's maybe not so efficient. So then we suggest to swap them around a bit. So we use the fixed licenses for the most active users in the center. And then if we go to the optimum here, so you see that we have a peak time of float 40% there, and that's 40% is the ratio 1 to 2.5. So if you have so if a user is logged in more than 40% during peak hours, they should have a fixed, and that's how we figure out how many fixed you should have. But then I have a different version of this. Let's see here. This is 1 to 3 ratio instead. And let's see if I can go. So as you see, we have a lot more fixed suggestion if you have 1 to 3 ratio instead of 1 to 2.5.
So does it have a report that spits out to actually say adjust these people to this?
Yes,
The pro version does that for you.
so you go, yes, you need so these are the users to move around with your current license mix, and this is the users to move around with your with the optimum license mix. And then you have a download and import file, but that doesn't work with the bundle licenses now in Helix, because we still need to figure out exactly where to push the data to get it updated right in all the right places. So, but I will show you this other. Okay. So this was another system where you have red also. So they have a shortage. So by optimizing everything, they could get from -15 to +33 instead. Yeah. So this is how it looked. These are the red are the users who actually experienced a shortage at some point. You can, when you hold your mouse, you will see how many times and so on. Or actually not. That was in the user log. Now with the historical license usage, I don't see the actual this red stuff. Sorry, but and then by moving them around a little bit, we have less red. And with complete optimization, you have it like this, with no red. And you see a small blue dots down here, and these are admin users that need their fixed license regardless. So even if they're not logged in, they need them. Okay, so that's right in time. Even
Perfect.
we had some troubles.
Yeah, my apologies.
Okay. So do you have any other notes or questions? Or?
So Peter, I got one clarification again on the self-service type licensing. Yeah. How is that tracked anywhere? I mean, you've got some of the, I mean, obviously everybody's got a suite license, and you can track those, but
yeah, the self-service license tracking is a little bit tricky. Both for the traditional smart SRM, our strategic direction, and that side is really so for SRM itself, again, users basically have to have a self-service user license. And in most cases, again, we would expect that the organization gives us their own public license. There is no separate tracking mechanism, and still isn't. Valid explanation we can give why certain users cannot submit things to SRM. We expect everybody needs to approve. Is in the big form and has a lot. So it's something for SRM and extra permission. And times when there was a custom could explain that a certain portion of these users not be able to support something, right? Or something. PWP things are a little different. The main portion is actually a portion similar to a certain self-service. But the active, as an active user license, it's actually a very attractive model. You really only pay for the users who are actively using the solution. And that is measured in the tool itself. So you just use it for a month. Licenses you have to have.
So that's that report that runs the login user.
Yeah, it tracks who has logged in and submitted a request. Users during the months use the solution, right? If you use it multiple times, it becomes so it's about how many distinct users were using the solution from. That is the number.
That's the threshold. That's the license count.
It's also not a variable one, so it's not like one day you kill you 1,500, the next one.
Right.
You also have to apply the upper limits. But at least you have a report that shows you.
So, in that perspective, but there's nowhere to assign that to the individual user.
License token, we did talk about it at some point in time.
But if you're really tracking each account, there's no really easy issue with it.
For active ones, it's about who logs in and something, right? For named ones, again, at some point in time, the discussion should be have a named DWP license. It's to be assigned, and whoever has this assigned to use the solution, whoever doesn't even have it assigned, cannot use the solution right from the token. So far, we basically look at everybody in the
And from my perspective, if you don't have both named and concurrent licenses, you cannot optimize it much. You have to buy whatever's there. So,
and sometimes it's a organization, only that part of the organization. Ultimately, you can show that these other users cannot use the solution.
So back in the day, I had the impression maybe it was a bad impression, but the SRM was because you didn't need the a relicense so that it was free. I've never had a concept that we needed to pay for self-service users. That seemed like that was a newer concept with DWP kind of, but you're telling me it was always a concept that you should purchase.
It's always been a self-service user license at a very important rate. License, I think, was $10.
But was that assigned to?
Some token.
No token assigned.
The assumption was companies would buy this for all their employees.
At the employee account, yeah, like $10 for 7,000 users or whatever.